you so much to both of you for joining me. Ramya, I'd like to start with you because it is unusual to have a young woman in a startup, that too related to technology and science. What is the worst thing that you've ever heard from someone that you've asked for funding from?
That's a good start, actually. Because, of course, being in the startup sector, we do tend to go to approach a lot of different investors. I think initially one of the best things that I've heard is, the first thing, we were 3 co-founders, and 2 of us were females and 1 was a male. So and I was front-ending most of all of these talks, and a couple of times when these people met me, they were like, so why don't you bring in your male co-founder onto the board so that we can see what we need to take forward?
Right.
And they also wanted to know if the tech actually belonged to me. And to be honest, one of the panelists, one of the interviewers in one of the, I think it was again for an investor meet, told me, when nobody else was able to think about it, why did you think of this technology? It doesn't sound right to me because it does not exist. So these are the kind of, yes.
But that is the whole point of technology.
Yes, that's the whole point of innovation, right? You actually invent something that's not there. And bringing in a line of products, robotics or social robotics for in disability sector is a completely new line. And yeah, these are few of the many things that I actually came across.
Do you laugh, or do you cringe, or do you get angry?
I think as a woman who's always been, I think in common words, more, sadly this is the case, they tell that I am more like a man than a woman because you strive, you want to fight, and you want to fight for your rights. And this is how I was looked at. I think over a period of time, in like 20 odd years, you kind of tend to be able to handle it better. Like initially you'll get pissed, you'll get really annoyed, looking at the fact that even the basic things that we need to fight for, but eventually you'll be like, you know what, this is not the way to go. Let's take it, let's show how things work. Let's make sure that we produce something that they don't even know. Like for example, I don't need a man on my panel for them to give me my money. My product should speak for itself. So I went about the fact that let's not lose it, but you know, let's focus on the point that we require. Nimaya is important and that's what it requires. But I make sure that I spread this message everywhere I go. This doesn't even start with the panel members, or I'm just taking another second out of your time. At the very basic, like, and I think people in Chennai are kind of used to Ritchie Street. Ritchie Street is the place where you get all kind of electronics and anything that you require. So all I ended up asking was for a basic nose clip plier. And I also asked him for an industrial grade soldering rod with specification. The person behind the counter refused to sell it to me because I was a woman. He said, a woman will not know how to use this. You will do something with it and come back and complain to me. And another person behind the counter told me, ma'am, if you're looking for jewelry making, that's not the street, go to a different one.
These are the stereotypes one has to live with. Sastra University for producing someone as talented and as spunky as you are. So well done. Sanghamitra, you must have heard so much more in your career so far. You're in a legacy institution set up in 1931, started by Mahalanobis. I mean, just about every checklist is ticked off in terms of the institution, and it's your second term. What are the things that you hear about being a woman scientist that still surprise you? Or you don't hear that anymore?
No, I don't hear that anymore. I must acknowledge I have faced no issues.
Right.
As a woman. Of course, as a scientist, as a director, or as a colleague, but I have never equated that with my gender. I do not think I have faced anything because of my gender. But of course, yes, like stories are there. I get a phone call, I want to speak to the director of the institute. So I had picked up that call and I said, yes. No, I want to speak to the director. So then I had to explain that I am the director. So that took some people by surprise. But I think this is not out there, and this is changing. So the change, since we can see that change, I am very hopeful that this is going to change in the not so distant future. Of course, the effort has to be constantly on. We have to be alert, we have to be on our toes, and those who have reached certain level, we have our roles cut out for us in the sense that we have to take those steps so that the generation which follows finds the path a little easier than what we did.
In fact, that's what I'd like to talk to you about, because you've had the door, you've had to open the door, shall we speak. How you did it, maybe you just unlocked it, or you did it by force, whatever. But now to keep the door open for the women who will follow, what are the things that we need to do? What are the things that you are doing to make sure that that happens?
That's right. One thing is, in particular in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, still the representation of women is very low. Therefore, in institutions like ours, representation of women, girls in the classes, it's quite low. We have been thinking about it, how to increase this representation. You see, our examination system, the way we evaluate, that is more tuned towards a lot of practice, a lot of tuitions and things like that. Also be very, very alert to the stereotype.
Yeah.
We have to actually explicitly speak it out, that these are the stereotypical roles cut out for the women, where we have to be alert that this is not so. Be alert that this is a trap which you might fall into. Do not fall into these traps. Mathematics, physics are a girl can do as well as any other person. But because of very early on social conditioning, girls tend to go away from mathematics. It's such a beautiful subject. Girls tend to go away from physics. Again, a wonderful subject, the best subject, at least to me, the best subject that one can think of. But that social conditioning that the parents, us, teachers, everybody, we have to be alert that the girl is not exposed to such stereotypes from very early on, so that she can flourish in the way that her natural capabilities allow. And I'm sure with that, with more and more girls coming into mathematics, in fact, many places I've seen a lot of girls in mathematics these days. The more they will go into all these science areas, and the more we will find girls higher up. So that is where we try to play our roles in trying to, at least for now, for lack of a better option, better alternative, to put some special seats for women,
right,
who may not have made that cut, the threshold that we have fixed for all the students, but maybe just a little less. But it has been found that if you allow these girls to come in, later on you take statistics again, how are they faring in class? When they exit the program, how they are placed, they are doing as well as anybody else. So that opportunity, equity of opportunity, that is, and for that, if you, so it's a difference between equality and equity.
Yes.
So that equity is very important, because that girl is disadvantaged. You cannot just give an examination and say, okay, fair as well as anybody else, while for 10, 12 years prior to that, she has not been exposed to that sort of training. So that equity, lower it a little, and then train her and see she is flourishing. Yeah. She is doing as well as anybody else. So that is where the higher education institutions have to play their roles, and the junior level schools, their teachers, their work is also cut out, so that the girls and the boys are trained that there are no gender stereotypes as we see in the books. Typically, doctor, we think of a man.
Yeah. A nurse, a woman.
A woman.
Yeah.
So these things have to be broken explicitly. Yes. That understanding and that explicit, it will not happen on its own, unless we actually put policies in place to stop it.
Right.
The books have to be redone.
Yeah.
So these things we have to be conscious and explicitly take these steps.
Ramya, you've had, you obviously must have excelled in maths and science when you were a child. Did you ever hear anything when you were growing up that, you know, this is not for you, or it's going to be tough, or did you have help when you were growing up to sort of guide you in this path?
So this is a path that I've actually lived through.
Yeah.
So one of the things, as a bachelor's, actually my degree is in electrical engineering.
Right.
But the thing that I actually wanted to do was mechanical. So when it comes to, you're talking about maths and science, the moment mechanical comes into place.
It's supposed to be,
yes.
yeah.
But that's something that I really, really wanted to do. And the day I wanted to join mechanical engineering, the first thing my mom said is, there's no girls in the class. Don't join. That was like the go-to thing, because, and I was able to see that it did change a little bit, but it's not, there's still, the percentage is like 10 to 90 in a mechanical class. And one of the things, so I made sure that I consciously changed my path, and in my master's I got into mechanical engineering, and that's how I took a master's in robotics, and then I continued, I pursued my PhD in mechanical. In fact, in Shastra I was one of the first one to have a PhD in the mechanical department as a woman, and I know Shastra just doesn't talk, right? You could see they sponsored all the changes that's required, and they made sure they supported me throughout, because that was required, and that is what, that conscious change is what that made me bring up this set of products. And I completely agree, ma'am, unless you have a conscious change in it, it's very difficult to, because somehow it's a taboo, right? It's okay to take electrical, it's okay to take electronics, especially computer science and IT, because
Computers,
it's like,
of course.
Yes, because it's
all you have to do is to sit and code.
and it's a well-trodden path. So people kind of think, okay, if you do this, then you will immediately be able to get a job in the software firms, and then you go ahead. That's, of course, that works. That's also STEM. But imagine if you had given the equal opportunity to women in every area, and right from social conditioning in at home to people in college and university and everything. Because as and when I moved from my BTech percentage, like the ratio of women to men in my class was 45 to 55. So that's quite good. But the moment I came to my MTech, because it was mechanical engineering, out of 20 people, 3 were girls.
Okay.
There was a sudden drop there. And then in PhD, I was literally one of the very, very few to be a woman. So we could very clearly see, and one of the reasons that's happening is because when you take, for example, as an electrical engineer, when I applied for when we had campus placements, I went through the entire process of interview, group discussion and everything. And once I got selected in one of the core electrical companies, in the last round they were like, oh, you're a woman, we can't give you this job. I'm like, you didn't realize that when I was writing the aptitude tests for some reason? You had to make me sit through 7 rounds and then suddenly tell me that...
What was the justification?
Because it's a field work and women are not capable of doing that. So be it with the electrical line, they're not capable. It's not, it's your safety. No, you're not capable.
Right.
That's the difference that brings in. So,
So, Sanghamitra, also your work is interdisciplinary. I mean, it's not just it's biology, it's
computer science and
computer
biology.
science, and it's a wonderful mix. This kind of interdisciplinary work. You talk a bit about that and the joy of bringing 2 or 3 kinds of disciplines together, as in fact Ramya has done as well. It's both social engineering as well as mechanical engineering. So that whole idea of interdisciplinary work is, there's so much fun in that, isn't it?
There is so much of fun in that. Well, biology just happened, by chance when I had already become a faculty member. I was terrified of biology in my school. Terrified of several subjects except, of course, physics, mathematics, and the languages.
You were always very good in them.
I was good in physics and mathematics, yes, and the languages. But anything that required memorization, I was very much afraid of that. But then what happened is I was doing computer science, I was developing algorithms which were like, classification algorithms, clustering algorithms. You have many, many things, and you want to classify. You want to say that these are the entities which belong to a particular class, etc. So we were developing algorithms for that, and I got a student who was had a biology background, and he convinced me that the work that we've been doing, the algorithms we've been developing, have a lot of applications in biology in analyzing biological data. So with
You
him,
mean in the way that we feel, in the way that we think?
No. In terms of molecules which are there inside the cell,
Right.
and each molecules actually there's technology by which you can measure, let's say, the concentration of the different molecules, etc. inside the cell when certain activities are happening, certain biochemical reactions are happening, and then, so for example, we have the genes. How much the gene is active? There is technology by which you can measure it. So therefore, in humans, there are about 30 of the order of 30,000 genes. So then you can measure the activity level of these 30,000 genes, and from there you might want to figure out which are the genes which have a particular, either it's very high or activity is very high or very low in certain disease conditions. So I was looking at some molecules called microRNAs, which has a lot of role to play in cancer. So my work has been around cancer, studying cancer in terms of computational algorithms. So this student teaches me biology and I teach him computer science. That's how it started. And every day he would teach me. I did not even remember genes, chromosomes, and so these things. Every day he would teach, I would forget. Next day he would teach me again. So he was a very patient teacher. And then I learned. It took about a year or so to pick up all the nuances of, not all, but at least majority, to understand the data set that I was working with. Because I could have just looked at it blindly as data.
Right.
But I wanted to understand the mechanism, the biological processes which created that data. So that is why I had to spend a lot of effort to understand the biological processes behind it. But then with that student, it was like, two-way traffic. He learned from me, I learned from him, and the collaboration worked very well. In fact, he is now in the US for many years now. So that is how I got into this area, but this is a very, it sounds nice.
Yeah.
That interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, collaboration, etc., it is very difficult to actually make it work. Because still now, in India at least, we lack that basic respect for the other discipline.
Right. And we don't have opportunities as well.
No,
right?
we
We tend to work in silos.
We work in silos, but that nobody has forced us to work in silos.
Yeah,
that
of
is
course.
silos we have created for ourselves.
Right.
And we have been unable to break those silos, so that is our problem. But that realization is there. People are now, collaborating across disciplines, across institutions, but not to the extent which is desirable. And for that, for example, a biologist has to respect the mathematician has to respect the computer scientist. Otherwise, with the availability of software everywhere, every domain expert thinks that I can do everything on my own, which is not correct. That is why the work is suboptimal. If a computer scientist sits with a statistician who sits with a biologist, and this group together solves a problem, then the quality of that work will be much higher. That is why we are working, but we are still not to that level. So that is where we have to change.
For instance, in the West, in the US, there was this Bell Laboratories model where most of the interdisciplinary talk happened in the canteen, apparently.
Exactly.
And that's where a lot of inventions and innovations happen.
Absolutely. The ideas get created in such informal interactions.
Yeah.
That, to the extent desirable, is not there still.
Right.
But nowadays you will see there are newer institutions which are coming up which do not have departments, they have schools.
Yes.
So an economist sitting beside a physicist, sitting beside a biologist, etc. And then they start talking. And then magic happens. So we are still waiting to get to that level, but we have to.
What is the thing that has given you most joy when you've discovered something? What is it that's given you most joy?
I mean, my work, as I said, because my work has been mostly related to cancer, one of our discoveries were a biomarker. And we were only doing computational algorithms, right? So we were on the computer, we were doing some simulation studies, etc. But our expertise ended there. We published, But a couple of years later, actually, we found that another group totally independently had validated that marker. That was for breast cancer.
Right.
So these are the things give you a lot of joy that the work that you're doing, you know, it has a place in that big scheme of
Right.
things. It's not, my research does not solve a problem fully. It is just a small piece of that puzzle, but that small, very important piece. So that is where we find a lot of pleasure from the work that we've been doing, because it's so real life. You can see, you can at least visualize the application.
It's the same with you, Ramya, right? You can see the difference that you're making.
Yes, I think that's one of the best thing is that when the parents call up or they come back with a feedback telling a child who is not able to imitate, but using our training system was able to imitate like ads on TV or whatever the mom was doing in the house, that is when it gives me the utmost satisfaction that, you know what, it makes a change to somebody who really,
Right.
really needs it. So that keeps me going, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest things that keeps me going.
Sanghamitra, the other problem has also always been of, you know, women reaching a ceiling after a point, you know, marriage, motherhood. There's always that tendency to drop off in any line of work. Do you see that still?
Yes, it is still there. Actually, the age of when the career takes off and the age when you
of-
have motherhood,
It's the same.
it coincides. So that's a problem.
Yeah.
But there are women who are working through it.
Yeah.
I did one of my very good papers when I was on maternity leave.
Right.
So it is possible, but it's a big challenge. You have to acknowledge that challenge, and that is where the family comes in a big way. The husband, wherever they are living, and the family, the parental support, either the boy's family or the girl's family, whichever. But that support system becomes very important, because in our country yet, you will not find that level of this other support, like creche and everything is there in the big cities, but in the smaller towns, etc., that is missing. So that ecosystem has to be built. The offices, the organizations, they have to be aware of this, this very difficult time and create the ecosystem to enable the woman to actually
Work through these things.
through these years.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is very important. And for the woman also, it means double the effort.
Yes.
But that has to be accepted with a smiling face, I guess.
Yeah. Ramya, sometimes do you feel that, you know, the senior women need to tell you how hard it is so that at least you know what to expect rather than making it all seem so easy?
That's true. That really helps, because sometimes you feel very alone.
Not to moan about it, but at least you should know.
Correct. Like, for example, a platform like this tells you there are a lot of things that we do face. Sometimes you're kind of alone in this whole fight, and it would actually be nice for anybody who's already gone through that path to actually tell us, you know what, this happens, don't worry, things are going to be okay. And that takes us really far, because it gives us the confidence that you can go far as well. But sometimes what happens is that their journey has been so hard,
Yeah.
they're like, you know what, it's not worth it. Get married and settle down. So,
Do you hear that? Has that happened?
Not much, but then I think we must also be alert that those of us, Ramya for example, I mean, she is in a very risky this thing also, where, you know, I am doing a job, I'm getting my salary
Yeah.
is,
She's
I
an
get a salary
entrepreneur.
at the end of the month.
Yeah.
But for her, I mean, I would be very, what should I say, apprehensive. But people are doing this, girls are doing this, but these girls, people like us who have reached to a certain level, should not be treated as exceptions to the rule.
yeah.
There is no rule that girls cannot do it. Girls can do it. And we are examples of that, it is possible. So if I can do it, anybody else can do it. I was asked this question that when I got a particular award earlier this year, that maybe your students will, the expectation of your students will increase. I said exactly the opposite. The expectation my expectation from my students has gone up, that if
Right.
I can do it, what's so great about it? You
Yeah.
can also do it.
Yeah.
So that is what, it should not be taken as an exception to the rule. This is the rule. It's only that there was not enough opportunity, therefore women were not able to come up. Now, once you give them enough opportunity, it's only a matter of time. So this is the rule. That is how it should be taken. The career of women should be a career, not a hobby.
Exactly. Yes. Are there any questions from the audience, especially from Shastra to your former, to your alumni? Yes. Please.
We teachers like me always wonder, in graduation level, PG level, in STEM education, girls will be, leading. They are very popular students. When in research or post PG, maybe 20% immediately they will be disappearing.
Right.
What may be the reason?
So they're disappearing, that's
That's what.
I mean, that's very, I mean, that is the age where they're likely to disappear.
They become invisible suddenly.
It's likely to disappear, and therefore, that is where our ecosystem needs to be alert and to bring them back into the fold. The government is trying. There are many schemes to bring women back, those who have taken a break.
Yeah.
But you see, once you take a break, I mean, that is inevitable, but then coming back and you have to cover double the way.
Yeah.
So it's a great challenge. It's a great challenge, and therefore, as I said, the boys also need to be trained that there are no stereotypes.
Yes.
Okay. So if the girl is good, that opportunity of her going out and doing all the outside work should be her responsibility. That because it's not just, you are not just giving the girl an additional advantage. It makes economic sense, because there are studies which show that organizations which hire more women, they are profitable. So it makes economic sense to have women in the workforce, to let them work. It's not, you are not doing them a favor.
Yeah. To enable, to
To help everybody in this society.
Yeah.
You need the women to be there. So this realization has to be there.
Yeah, that is true. But the sad truth is, like, when we are talking about the age, the sad truth is that when a man has a master's, he's a catch.
Yeah.
When a woman has a master's, she's not very desirable. That's the problem there. Because I know the path that I've gone through, and I've faced literally every single thing. So that's always been the case. But that support starts with your family.
Right.
And of course, the most important thing is that growing up, everybody, irrespective of the gender, should be taught that there are absolutely no stereotypes across the gender at all. That comes as the very, very, very basic thing. Because in my case, my dad really supported me go through the whole thing. If it wasn't for him, that support was constant. And that helped me get to my PhD and do whatever I am here today. But that is not the case in most of them. I've seen women aspire so much, and they have unbelievable ideas, and they would make such unbelievable leaders. And to see that potential go to waste because of the sheer lack of support is where the problem is in this.
Yeah, please. Ms.
Question.
Lee. Yeah.
When you talked about disappearing girls, and she's partly answered that. Do these girls disappear out of personal choices they're making, or is it social pressure?
Partly both. Sometimes it's a personal choice because that is the age when they have a child. So mothers feel guilty. That guilt
Or
conscience.
they are made to feel guilty.
Sorry?
Or they are made to feel guilty.
Yes, made to feel, but also I've seen many women who on their own feel very guilty if they're not giving their child, particularly the child, enough time. There are very few women who do not feel guilty. I think one or two exceptions are there who say that, okay, I am like whatever I am. I don't want to be in the home all the time, and I don't feel guilty about it. So that guilt feeling, and also the expectation of the near family, that, "Arey, bachche ko nahi dekhoge tum?
Yeah.
What mother you are?" That also adds on. I think that is more than the person's own choice, but even the person's choice plays a role. She chooses to come out of that hectic life and give more time to the child. I think that is both ways, as you said, both ways.
May we have fewer disappearing women, and may there be more women like you, more visible, more vocal, and more productive. And society benefits at the end of the day, isn't it?
Right.
Thank you so much, both women. It was a delight. A little louder applause would be nice. Thank you so much. Thank you.